Okay, here we're going to have an example, and I think we're going to go through all of the different areas so that you should be able to get a good grasp of how to complete an effective paper. So here we go. And going through our first step is to establish the major points. We're going to review the scenario, review the required content, and then sort, combine, and merge to come up with the major points. This is the rubric from a roles and functions paper for an undergraduate course, and as you can see, the scenario is a 300 to 700 word paper based on the readings, and it's going to have your definition of the role and application of management's function used in today's healthcare managers. And there are some specific things that they're going to look for. What is the most important role or function for a healthcare manager? What is the most significant aspect related to healthcare management that you want to get out of taking this course? Use a minimum of 2 references to support your paper. So this is what is actually given in the rubric as the scenario. As we look at the required content, there are 3 basic bullets. Number 1, your definition of the role and application of management functions. Number 2, the most important role or function. And number 3, what you want to gain by taking this course. Now, one of the things I want to point out here that's not exactly intuitive, but I think it's important to say, is that APA requires third person. And it specifically says here what is your definition, what do you want to get out of this class, and a lot of people will write their papers in first person and thinking, well, the whole thing was about me. The whole paper was supposed to be about me, and that does not give you an excuse to write this in first person. And the reason for that is APA, one of the really neat things about APA is that requiring third person forces you to be objective, and it forces you to pull yourself back and analyze a situation from a third person perspective. And that's why you need to continue to write things in third person, no matter what the assignment is, no matter whether it says, I want your opinion or not, you still need to use it from a third person perspective. It's always assumed that it's your opinion, but you always need to write it in third person. So no matter what the assignment is, remember, even in your memo assignment in week 1, you still need to write it in third person. So for purposes of this exercise, we came up with the following 3 major points. Number 1, define management roles and functions. Number 2, discern the most important role. And number 3, define the expectations of HCS 325. Now that we have established our major points, it's time to actually draft our outline. So here we have our outline, and it's just a coincidence that the title of our paper is the same as our first major point, which is management roles and functions. Now, I think it would be fair to say that you don't want to put the words paper or assignment in the title of your paper. So, for instance, you don't want to actually title your paper Management Roles and Functions Paper or Management Roles and Functions Assignment. It's automatically assumed that it's a paper because you're writing a paper. So you don't want to do that. You want to title it something else. So here we have the title, and then we move on. As you can see, everything in this first level of our outline is Level 1, we have our 3 major points: management roles and functions, most important role, and then expectations from HCS 325, our conclusion, and then our references. Now, as we kind of dug a little deeper here under management roles and functions, we took roles and we took functions, and we had a level 2 header for each one of those. And then under each one of those, we had a level 3 header. So for roles, we had interpersonal, informational, and decisional. For functional, we had planning, organizing, controlling, and leadership. So we had level 3 headings actually in this particular outline. So this is how we would probably format an outline to its fullest extent under this particular assignment. So in our example, we have created our major points. We've drafted our outline. Now we're going to draft our statement of major points. And as you can see, our introduction and conclusion statements are very similar. The only difference is one is future tense and one is past tense. So our introduction sentence is, this paper will define management roles and functions, identify the most important management role, and list specific learning expectations for the conclusion of HCS 325. And then the conclusion is just the opposite. This paper defined management roles and functions, identified the most important management role, and listed specific learning expectations for the conclusion of HCS 325. And that's pretty much it. You basically come up with one or two sentences, you draft it, it lists all the major points, and then you have the future tense for the introduction and then the past tense for the conclusion. Now that we have actually put the framework and the foundation and the framework together, we can actually just fill in the blanks and put the house together using that analogy. It's pretty easy to actually write the paper once you have everything put together. So that's what we're going to do. As you will recall, there are a few places that you can go for a literature search when coming up with the literature for your sources. The first two are the textbook and the article reserve reading. And I think those are probably the two number one sources that you can find, in that they will give you everything that you need and the numbers that you need them, and you should be very well taken care of with those two. So you can get that from the course materials area, and this is where you can find it, and they usually correspond directly with the rubric, so everything goes hand in hand with one another. The final step to the puzzle is actually going in and proofing, and in proofing it's the final step to the process. I usually do an initial proof 12 hours or so after I've actually written the paper. I put it away and get fresh eyes to look at it, If I don't have time to do that, then I will get somebody else to look at it. I also send it through WritePoint, and that way it'll pick up on some things that I may not have been able to pick up on. One thing to remember, though, that I may not have already mentioned is that WritePoint will not pick up on everything, so you're going to want to make sure that you do that initial proof as well. You also want to do a plagiarism checker just to make sure that you have listed everything from a reference perspective and a citation. And also you can get your fellow students to check it as well. And then you submit it for grading. This concludes this module of Paper Basics. Once again, we went over the purpose, the basic structure of each rubric, the steps involved in the process of drafting a paper, and finally we went over an example of how you would use those steps in the drafting of a paper.